Explorations. Probing global diversification. We travel the world so you don't have to.
Hi, and welcome to Explorations. Today we have Tony Murdock. He's a meditation instructor.
Okay, so with me today, Tony Murdock. If someone was to ask you what your job is or what your title is, what would you say? I'm a
meditation instructor.
Meditation instructor. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so I guess we can begin by asking you what is meditation?
Well, it's a process of calming the mind, taking the stresses out of your body, your thoughts, your emotions. With meditation, we're trying to calm ourselves down. We're trying to harmonize all parts of ourselves, which includes the physical, mental, and emotional, with the ultimate goal of connecting to the spiritual.
Now, does this depend on the individual or circumstances at all? The meaning, I mean, of meditation? Because there are so many different people and we all look at the world differently.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. There are a lot of different meditation styles out there. And a mistake that some people make, it's not necessarily a mistake, they're drawn to meditation and they may go to a particular style, a teacher with a particular style, and that's what they get introduced to, and that's what they stay with, and it might not be right for them. What I try to do, I approach things in a more generic way, and because there are so many different types of people out there, I do what's called a meditation sampler, or we test a variety of different meditation styles so that people in a class can determine what is right for them, because some people are more auditory with listening, some people are more visual, some people like to just sit still, some people are devotional. So with meditation, there are two broad categories. One is trying to bring everything down to the zero or move everything towards the one. So one type of meditation that takes everything towards the zero or nothingness would be a Zen style meditation, Buddhist meditation. And a type of meditation taking everything towards union or one would be a devotional focused type of meditation. So it depends what a person's nature is as to what they'd be drawn to.
Now, the typical or traditional way that I envision meditation is someone sitting there with a stiff spine, legs crossed and whatnot, and trying to get into a certain kind of headspace. I know I've tried it in the past, thinking, okay, I'm meditating now, but I found it very frustrating because I couldn't get to that place. Yet I find that, for instance, if I go to a park somewhere where there's a river flowing and there's trees around and birds singing and actually no other people really there to distract me, I find that I just automatically slip into some kind of a meditative state. Is it important to are the appearances of meditation important, I guess, or is it more important sort of the vehicle of how you get there?
A little bit of both. Body posture is important. Making sure your spine is erect, your head is centered on your head. Your head is centered on your shoulders, rather. And the idea is you want to be upright and erect. If you're lying down, as some people like to do relaxation techniques, they'll do their meditations lying down. The tendency would be to fall asleep. I do work a little bit with posture, and this is where yoga comes in to help to stretch the body and tone the muscles so that you can sit longer in meditation. In fact, this is something that I've been teaching in the yoga teacher training programs that I'm involved in, is that this is where yoga postures came along in the history of yoga, is that meditators wanted to sit longer in meditation, so they needed to stretch their body and take the stresses out of their body, tone up the muscles so they could sit longer. I do emphasize that to a certain extent, but what I have found in the training that I've received, more important than posture is attitude. So if you're moving in with the right attitude, I've seen people go into very deep, blissful states of meditation, but from an observer's standpoint, watching them, say, well, how could they be in that kind of state? Their body posture is not right. On the other hand, I've seen people in perfect body posture, and there's just something intuitively that says they're not very deep inside. They're very restless. It's very much image of what they're doing. So I stress posture, yes, but it's the inner attitude, what the mind is doing, what the heart is doing in the meditation. Both go together, but I would lean more towards the inner attitude.
Why would you say meditation is even important in the first place? I mean, we can take this on the individual level, and we can take it on the mass level as well.
Yes. Well, a lot of people come to meditation because they have some stresses in their life, perhaps some health issues, and they're trying to fix those. So I may go around a room of beginners and ask why they're there, and most of the answers I receive from them would be they want to feel less stressed, they want to calm the mind. Some people say they want to blank the mind, although that's not really what we're trying to do in meditation. They're trying to ease what's going on. And then what I do is try to build a framework for their practice, letting them know that meditation can not only take the stresses from their physical body, meditation can also take the stresses from their mind. We're trying to calm the mind, trying to ease the emotions. There's a lot of emotional trauma that people have experienced these days. And once we bring everything into a place of harmony, then they can get in touch with their inner spirit and their inner creative element. I do a lot of work at a organization called Wellspring that supports those who have cancer. So a lot of people there are because they have physical problems associated with their cancer, but there's also emotional trauma associated with being diagnosed with cancer. So I've been with them for about 7 years, and I've seen a lot of growth and easing of stresses, not just physical, but emotional as well. They're able to use meditation to help with pain management. So there are a number of people also who have gotten to a point where they might not have been too spiritual to begin with, but they have developed more of a spiritual connection and hence more peace in their lives. And this is what meditation can help to bring.
Seems to bring some kind of balance to one's life. Now, is there anybody, or are there people out there, do you think, that can balance themselves naturally, in other words, without realizing it, or do you really have to go through some sort of process in order to get there?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I've met a lot of people who say they don't need meditation because they go out in their boat, or they go fishing. They're running. I hear people say, well, I run and I get into a runner's high. What do I need meditation for? There are a lot of things that we can do. I think they help to a certain extent, but you use the word process, and I think that's very important. If you look at the history of meditation in different religious traditions, there's a real emphasis on the application of a technique, process. What I tell my students, I have 3 P's that I work with: practice, practice, practice. And the analogy we work with is, if you want to learn how to play a musical instrument, and I understand that you are a musician, you have to practice. You try. I tried the accordion when I was younger, or my parents tried to make me try the accordion when I was younger. I should have kept it up. I could have been in some rock bands later on.
Giving
But
Frankie Yankovic a run for his money.
yeah,
Anyway.
that's right. So with learning anything, I use the analogy of trying to play the piano. First off, we're trying to figure out what the keys are, then what fingers go on what keys, and then eventually three blind mice will sound like three blind mice, and then it starts to develop a flow where you don't think about it. And some of the greatest piano players, when they're sitting at the piano, they're not thinking about what finger goes on what note, it just flows through them. Meditation is the same thing. There's effort, there's application, there's practice, there's failure, you keep at it, and eventually we go to levels or tiers where it just becomes more natural and the effort turns into something that's effortless after a while.
When you originally entered into your study of meditation,
Yes.
was there a purpose in mind, or did you sort of let things evolve and go as they came?
Well, I was always interested in things spiritual, not necessarily meditation. I didn't know too much about meditation back in the early days. When I was a teenager, I had a job in a cemetery. I'd hop the back fence and go to work in the cemetery, cutting the grass and digging the holes. At night, I would make candles in my parents' basement and read the Tibetan Book of the Dead and books like this that gained some interest. This got me interested in things spiritual, and this took me on my travels out west, back in the days when hitchhiking was considered safe and normal, out to the west coast of Vancouver Island. And there I discovered people living a pretty freedom-oriented life on the beaches there. And I discovered a book called Be Here Now that had just come out. This is 1971. The book came out in 69, I believe, by Ram Dass. And that book made an impression on me. And the next year, my travels took me into Southern California, where I was just living on the beaches down there, I was trying to find the hippie lifestyle, and I couldn't find it. I had missed it. It sort of happened in a blink, and I grew up in Barrie, so we were like 2 years behind things, and we're living a romanticized version of being the hippie. So I went down to the States looking for something. There was some spiritual call, and I was actually on the beaches down there reading a book called The Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. And I read that there was a place just south of where I was called Encinitas where he wrote the autobiography. So I traveled down there and hitchhiked. And I was expecting some wise, holy man to greet me at the gate and saying, "Welcome, my son, we've been waiting for you." That wasn't the case. There were a couple of people there at selling books, and what I did do was gave almost the last of my money to stay there in their hermitage a couple of days, and one person that was there befriended me and said, "Well, there's a holy man coming from India. Would you like to come and see him? They're going to have something called a kirtan, which is devotional singing." So he gave me the address, and I went back to where I was in Laguna Beach, and the day came up for me to go to this address. And if you know Laguna Beach, at that point, 72, it was the center of the universe, basically hippiedom. And long hair, everyone picked up everyone, it was kind of a freedom aspect. And I wasn't getting a ride. I was trying to hitchhike, and I wasn't getting a ride. And I remember closing my eyes for the first time that I was really conscious of, and praying, I need to get there. I closed my eyes as I need to get to Garden Grove where this kirtan was. And I opened my eyes, the next car stopped, picked me up, and drove me to the house. And what I hadn't realized was with the Southern California freeway system, I could not have hitchhiked there because there's no ramps like they have here in Southern Ontario. There are, I guess it's becoming more like Southern California, but hitchhiking would have been near on impossible. But the people dropped me off. There I met my teacher, the person that became my guru, and ended up staying with the yoga center that he was associated with for 4.5 months. And that really got me into what meditation is, doing yoga postures, and the whole devotional side of spiritual practice. I was learning it all as a combination, and everyone learning their own individual approaches. So I ended up going back and forth for the next so many years, living down there a total of 6 years, so it became very much a part of my lifestyle.
Now, my colleague Nina was saying that your mother also played a role in your
Yes.
development as a spiritual person.
Yes. I always remind her of this, and she scratches her head a little bit, trying to wonder what I'm talking about. But she's the one that actually introduced me to the book, The Autobiography of a Yogi, which is all about the life of yogis in India. And that's the book that I used when I traveled down into the States. But she was often involved in meditation, and yoga really wasn't around in those days, but she was interested in Edgar Cayce and different aspects of other dimensions of reality. So it was always there as a background and introduction, and she's always been there to inspire me as well, as my father had as well. She says she's slowing down at 88. 3 years ago, she went skydiving, and on my website, there's a video of her. She had a videographer jump out of the plane with her and videotape her descent. So she is not opposed to trying new things and new travels, and she's always been encouraging of me in my studies at university, studying comparative religion, but also with my own individual spiritual practice. I guess she found that was a much better lifestyle for me than kind of the vagrant lifestyle that I was leading when I was younger, not knowing where I was as I was hitchhiking around North America.
Yeah, I guess everyone has to have some kind of purpose, although in youth it's a time of discovery as well, I guess. So,
Yes.
You're trying different things before you finally find that path. And speaking of the path, and you mentioned the fact that you were studying different religions
Yes.
along the way. Is it important to have some kind of a religious base to carry out effective meditation? I suppose to be a spiritual person, it helps to have some kind of appreciation of what's out there in terms of different faiths. But
Yes.
what if if you don't believe necessarily in the different approaches to religion and whatnot? Can you still have a spiritual path?
Yes, absolutely. I did study comparative religion at York University, undergraduate, and then I was at McMaster. I think you were too, weren't you?
Yes, I was.
So I studied there in the religious studies department, and I did my master's degree in Hindu religious history and minored in Christianity. And I was there for 5 years doing my master's. Did a lot of my PhD work, but didn't finish. I was one of those people that took a year off and never went back. So I got up, I did my comps, and then took a year off, and then life just took over at that point. But what I'm doing now isn't so much religious as it is spiritual, and I see a big distinction between what religion is and what spirituality is. A lot of people can be very spiritual but not necessarily be tied to a specific religion. The same thing as some people can be very religious and not necessarily be all that spiritual. And I'm finding more and more people these days aren't being brought up in a very structured religious group. But a lot of them they're open-hearted, they have loving kindness, a love of nature, and they're very spiritual. So when I'm teaching meditation, I don't really teach it from the standpoint of being religious. I emphasize that it is spiritual, and I often use the word generic. so that people don't feel that I'm trying to push a Hinduism on them or a Buddhism on them or even a Christianity on them. Some people are brought up Christian, but they have issues with their Christian upbringing, so they moved away from it. So I try to encourage people to practice the techniques that are drawn from different religious and spiritual traditions, but to apply them to their own belief on what life is.
Now, when you talk about using meditation and spiritual development in connection with healing,
Yes.
now I assume that one would think that people do need healing. Perhaps everybody needs healing on some level.
Yes.
Do you think that everybody needs some kind of fixing, or are there people out there who are so well tuned that this doesn't matter?
Yes, if you look at what the goal of meditation is, the goal of spiritual life, according to many different traditions, it's some far-off term that we're trying to come to grips with is enlightenment, or satori, which is Zen, nirvana, which is Buddhist, not the group. We're trying to attain some deep state, and if we're not there, something needs to be fixed. So a lot of people are coming to meditation because the healing that needs to occur at multiple levels, very often it's the physical that they're most concerned about, but it could be emotional or even mental traumatic, and we're trying to work through that. So as I mentioned earlier, I always try to present the big picture that it's like a car that is out of alignment. The tires get balder, other parts of the car start to not work as well as they should if one part's not working. And the same thing with the human psyche or the human energy system is that if one part is not working, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional, we're all these aspects of ourselves are interconnected. So if one is out, the others will be thrown out as well.
In science fiction, sometimes you see these movies about a society way off in the future, or
Right.
everyone is well centered and everybody's, living this groovy. Sorry for the old, for the I don't know what you
Like
call
the
it,
word.
but the words from the past. What I'm trying to get at here is this. I mean, we have megalomaniacs in our society. We have
Yes.
people who want to be leaders, and often we see leaders as those who have to be ruthless to get to where they have to go. Where does meditation play a role in all of this?
Well, it can help in both regards. If we're need to earn a living, we need income, we want to aspire, become more successful. Meditation can be used to help us to focus our attention on our goals. Our mind's restless. In Buddhism, they call it training the puppy. So the puppy's all over the place and undisciplined, and in many respects, our mind is undisciplined. So meditation helps to discipline the mind. The idea about meditation is disciplining the mind so we can go into higher states of consciousness, but the spillover into our everyday life is that it can help us to become more focused on what our goals are in our life and not get distracted, keep our eye on the prize, as the saying goes. So with meditation, we not only learn to become more calm and centered, but we also learn to become more focused. So if our goal in life is to be focused on material success, meditation can be used to help us with that. There's a grander picture that comes with meditation, is that from a spiritual perspective, is that meditation helps us to become more attuned to, and I'm going to use a generic term, that infinite reservoir of energy that's all around us, the universal creative matrix, you might call it. And meditation helps us to attune to that. And when we attune to that, what we're doing is perhaps helping ourselves get more attuned to what our spiritual goals are in life, as opposed to what our ego-centered goals might be. Ego-centered might be climbing that corporate ladder. I don't care how many people I stomp on I want to get as high as I can. That's my goal. But you're hurting a lot of people along the way. With meditation and, say, surrendering and attuning to that universal consciousness, that infinite reservoir of energy, that energy helps us to get what we need. We don't often get what we want, but we get what we need. Good old song.
Right.
So if we become more humble and surrender to that, what that goal might be, that isn't necessarily an ego goal, things tend to work out for us in a much more, we end up being much more peaceful, more calm, more harmonious, and happy.
I would say that's probably understandable, but say now you have somebody who is determined that he's going to, swashbuckle his way to the top.
Yes.
How do you deal with people like that? Every so often you come across somebody who is going to break all the rules just to get what he or she wants.
Yes. Well, there's a little formula that I often teach, and it comes from the basic principles of the law of attraction. And I try to bring this into meditation and try to have people understand what this is that first off, you need to know what it is that you want. And, I'm applying this to meditation, but it can be applied to life as well. So know what you want, and then you put your attention on it with feeling. And if when doing this it starts to not feel right, then you need to perhaps readjust what your goals are. If we can be honest in our introspection and our self-analysis of ourselves, then we can move closer to what is feeling right and making us happy. When these things start to manifest in our lives, be it something from the material world or something from our meditative world, and we're not really attuning to it, then we can readjust as well. There's a big thing about allowing. And in meditation, there is loving kindness as well. So we start to become more empathetic with what we're doing as we're aspiring towards our goals, even if it might be in that corporate environment and we're striving for success. And we start to realize that, yes, in the process of doing this, I don't want to cause harm to other people. That's what meditation will start to bring out. If a person is not developing in this way with their meditations, the meditations will not work well for them. They're using it really for the wrong purpose. And it is very ego-centered and ego-based. It will help them to focus, become more determined, and perhaps attain their goal, but they're losing something in the meantime, and that is that connection with life all around them, which means a connection with other human beings.
Absolutely.
And so many people have, as a result of meditation, just become not so much the gossiper, not wanting to hurt other people, and they just become more easygoing around this, and so their nature changes as a result, and then perhaps even the goals in their life start to change. They realize that, well, climbing that corporate ladder may not necessarily be what I want. It's not really going to make me happy. What I want is to feel calm and happy and peaceful and practice loving kindness with other folks as well. And perhaps I need to get another job, another line of work. In Buddhism, they call it right livelihood. So right livelihood, the way I like to express this with my students is that when you go to your job, how does that feel? Is it affecting your health? If you're gritting your teeth and bracing yourselves to go into work and you're just trying to get through the day, and how is it affecting your health? Or are you going to your job and it energizes you? You're living your passion. It's making you happy and fulfilled. So these are the things we have to look at. Meditation very often helps us to discover if this is the right path for us or not, the right working path.
So,
do you like your job? Oh, you paused.
Sometimes.
Okay.
The fact that I hesitate, there are days when it's not as much fun as other days. But For me, I think it has more to do with repetition and boredom rather than any specific. I mean, there are aspects of it, like the people I work with. It's great. Because I work in news, I get to discover things before other people do, and I get to see what goes on in the world at times that other people don't get to see. I sort of have an inside view, and then of course there are always interesting news stories.
Yes.
But there are also days where you spend talking about a funeral 8 times, and I don't like going to funerals at the best of times. So,
Right.
you know, when you have to experience the harsh side of it, death, destruction, you know, bad political situations and whatnot. So, you know, I I could probably go on and on, but it's a fractured work world. I suppose I could ask you about that. How do you deal with a situation where some of it's good and some of it's, well, whatever?
Yeah, it is tough, because very often people are tied to a particular job, and it's what they've been trained to do, and there are the positive sides and negative sides. And this is where meditation can really help you approach the challenges that you need. What we call these are life lessons, and our life lessons can very often be in the vocation that we have. And what we're trying to do is meet our challenges face on with that focus, with the, I'm going to use that term again, loving kindness towards other people, that gentleness with other people. And it's you know, there's a term that's often called grist for the mill. And what we're trying to do is become better people, but it's not always an easy path. And there are the challenges that we have in our life, or the challenges we have in our job, that might not feel pleasant when we're in the midst of them, but they help us to become better people. When I was 10 years corporate middle management, I had the view when I left, boy, that was a wasted 10 years. Why did I do that? And then I started thinking back and realized, wow, what a wonderful training ground. I learned how to deal with difficult people, with angry people. I learned how to work with money, you know, as a credit manager, amongst other things, and lawyers. I learned how to deal with, like, you know, legal threat. You know, in the beginning, it just, you know, scared me to the bone when legal letters came up and my name was named, just as a person that was associated. And I learned how to respond to these things. So these are tools that became very important when I started my business of teaching meditation, is that I could very easily put my credit manager cap on and say, this is how much my meditation class is, and not feel awkward about it. Or when I'm dealing with difficult people, or challenging situations, I can rise to the occasion much more readily. And, you know, I'm still human, and there are times when it gets a little trying at times, but a lot of that early training helped to prepare me to do what I'm doing now.
I don't know if you're a hockey fan at all or not, but I know the Toronto Maple Leafs had a huge collapse at the end of the season there. And one of the things that a lot of the players and the team members said was that this was a good learning experience for them in the end, even though they didn't make the playoffs.
Yes. It's the failures sometimes that are our greatest lessons. But you mentioned sports, and where meditation comes in. This is where meditation and visualization is becoming much more mainstream, you know, where anyone associated with a particular sport, and we see this in the Olympics, is that they're always envisioning in their mind what they are wanting to do. And the more you envision in your mind, the more we move into the reality of that. And there have been a lot of studies done in this area where an athlete they'll be hooked up, you know, electrodes and all this, and they'll do a physical activity, and their brain is responding in a certain way. Then they're asked to do the same activity without moving a muscle, just go through the whole routine in their mind, and the brain is responding in the same way. So envisioning helps us to get there. So, this is where the law of attraction comes in too, especially with meditation, is that I envision myself being a spiritual person, a peaceful person. It's not praying for peace, it's praying peace, praying love. This is where I want to be right now. I want to be calm. And at Wellspring, I am healthy. A lot of cultures don't have the language saying I am sick. There's sickness in me. We tend to take ownership of these things. I hurt, so I got to fix my. We identify with hurt, where, and again, a lot of cultures there's no language for that. Let's take the hurt out of me.
So, what is your ultimate purpose then, with all of this that you're doing? Do you have one? Maybe not.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I'm not sure. My tradition is a devotional tradition tied to the teachings of Ramakrishna, who lived at the end of the 1800s. And the goal that he teaches is very eclectic and universal in his acceptance of all religions, is to feel that ultimate connection with that universal consciousness in whatever way we can, finding our own individual path. And we have these terms that we throw around: enlightenment and self-realization, God-realization, and I guess they can apply, but they're just words. What we're trying to do is be fully human, but at the same time to be fully spiritual. There are goals around, I want to be enlightened, I want to get out of here. This is all a mistake, where there's a different thinking in a lot of traditions now, where this is not a mistake. This reality is not a mistake. It's a playground. It's a learning ground. But I want to be in this playground from a realized standpoint. So I guess if there's a goal there, that would be the goal. In Ramakrishna's terminology, it would be Nitya Lila. Nitya, these are Sanskrit words. Nitya meaning eternally connected. Lila meaning at the same time playing. So you're playing in this reality fully connected to the spiritual. So I guess that's my goal. I just turned 61, and I should be looking forward to some type of retirement, yet that doesn't seem to be the case. My life is getting busier and busier and busier. Teaching classes, teaching workshops, leading retreats. I have a meditation cruise coming up.
Yes, I was going to ask you about
February.
that, but you may as well talk about it.
So all these new things are coming up to keep me busy and activated. My wife's a yoga teacher, so it's in our family, you might say. We're teaching yoga. She teaches yoga, I teach meditation. But one of my students, I've got a meditation teacher training program, and one of my students has been bugging me for a while. His wife does cruises. Let's do a meditation cruise. And that seemed outside of my comfort zone. I was unfamiliar with it. I hadn't done a cruise before. But then I realized, well, why not do something new? Why not do an adventure on the high seas? And so we've organized this now. And we had to start from the grassroots, you might say, and build it up. My website is towardstillness.com, and we set up the cruising website, and it's called Cruising Towards Stillness.com, and it's all set up, ready to go. All the information is there, and what we're inviting people to do is come on this week-long cruise to the Eastern Caribbean, St. Thomas and St. Martin, and we have a program planned for onboard time. We have some programs planned for on the island times, but it's basically a meditation and yoga cruise, learning how to attune, and let's remove our stresses, let's have some fun, and that's what we're looking to do.
And people, from what I see, still have 11 months or so to think about it. March 1st, 2015, right?
February 22nd.
Okay.
We sail from Fort Lauderdale, and then we come back on March the 1st. So they still have time to sign up, and I hope people do. It's going to be an exciting trip. And if it's successful, and I'm sure that it will be, we'll keep on doing these. We're hoping to do 2 of them a year.
Sounds like a good idea, actually. I know that recently, for the first time, I noticed, and I'm sure it's been going on for a little while, that different rock musicians, groups like Yes and who else? The Moody Blues, and people that you and I would probably be familiar with, given our ages, are starting this sort of thing as well. They're doing these music cruises 4 or 5 days. I think I thought was an excellent idea, and doing a meditation cruise also. I mean, that sounds fantastic. Not that you couldn't meditate, I suppose, sitting by a pool in the sunshine, just being there.
Yes, yeah. Well, I'm sure we could, but this brings in some adventure too.
Right.
Although it is going to be interesting trying to sit still with the gentle swaying of the boat.
That's true.
But we're up for that challenge as well.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Tony. Really appreciated this chat. Very interesting.
Well, thank you for asking.
Thank you for joining us. For more information about Tony Murdock, go to his website at towardsstillness.com. For Explorations, I'm Nina Hilger.